In this one we go from a paper plan to something that resembles a model railway. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie. And today's video is all about developing the infrastructure around the Chadwick Parkway station. But where do these stations come from? What is the parkway concept? Well, I thought the first thing we'll do is go online and have a look at some real life examples. Now here we are with our old friend Google Maps, and here is Bristol Parkway Station. And as you can see, this is the mass that is Bristol. And instead of using Bristol Temple Meads to cater for all these estates that have been built, they went for a parkway station. Now apparently parkway means kind of park away from the town. I can find no real evidence of this sort of stuff. But you can see here this massive housing estate here at Bradley Stoke. Lots of stuff going on. So let's have a dive into it and just check it out. So here we can see the guts of it. And if I switch views to the actual map itself, and then we can see the design of the platforms. But switching back to the main view and zooming in a little more, now you can see it's all about parking. So you've got this car parking here, you've got this multi-storey car park here, and again more and more parking. Lovely. So people will drive to the parkway station, drop the car off, pay to park on the station, and whether they go to London, Plymouth, Birmingham or whatever, rather than trying to go into the centre of Bristol. But parking is what it's about, and these platforms here are very, very narrow, very plain. It really is on the cheap. Bristol Parkway has been rebuilt since its initial sort of build in the late 60s, early 70s, and it is now a little bit more tasteful, let's say. Now if we go down to Tiverton, and there is the sort of town of Tiverton, and Tiverton Parkway again is out in the countryside. And if we zoom a little here, again it's right next to the motorway. So here it is, and going in a little closer still, we can see there's the actual station building. There's the two lines coming through and a little footbridge and parking here. Zooming out a shade, you can also see that there are two sort of satellite car parks out here. So I imagine they were built as the station became more popular. Then I imagine this land was brought up. And how does it work? Well, there's a single road going into the station area. There's a small roundabout, and obviously then you can go down here and find that there's not enough parking and you'll have to go and use one of those other two car parks kind of thing. But you can see the basics of how it all works. Another station is Bachmann Parkway, though I believe this was actually built, sort of renamed rather. I'm afraid you can't see it with this image because of the shadows, but again if I switch back to the ordinary view, you can see it's, you know, it's all about car parking, and it's just two straight lines that go through, but it's away from the town itself. So if I pull out, so there's the Bachmann railway station, and here is Bachmann right over here. So Bachmann Parkway, and again you would drive to Bachmann Parkway, pick up a train to Exeter, Plymouth, Bristol or whatever. But the thing to remember, especially using this as an example, is it's built on the cheap. So from here, now let's go and take a look at some line side photos. Now it's fair to say that the structure of Bristol Parkway is not going to win any design awards for outstanding architecture. It's all very straightforward, easy lines, easy to maintain, easy to clean, modern, efficient sort of buildings and structures and seats and canopies. It's what you'd expect in a modern station. Whilst we look at these images, I would like to thank the photographers because they've had the courage to rank these photographs as in the Creative Commons category, which means people can use them. It's lovely. And please note here the use of steel railings rather than expensive brickwork. This next image here of the Class 47 was probably taken in the 80s, and to the right hand side we can see a railway building. Now this is known as a clasp building. So it's basically, I think it's a steel frame, there's brick infill and there's major glass panels along with sort of plastic panelling to go with it. And this is particularly important when we come to look at my Chadwick station. Now, as you'd imagine, over the past week or so, I've been trying to plan out the station. Bits of paper, pencil, rubber, changes, revisions, and all that sort of thing. But here we have the basics of the Chadwick Parkway layout. So starting at the western end, we have our road that goes up to the hillside to the farms, which will now become a small country side road. And many thanks to the people who gave me that useful advice. So we come into the station area now. There's a loop of a road that comes in, and working out online the turning circle of a Panorama Elite coach. So your coach would come into the station. I thought I was too old to play with cars. Drop off there, and enough coach space for two coaches. Lovely. And they will then be able to exit this area back onto the main road. Whoops, spiff in. Right. And so this road comes up here towards the main station. We have the main station area, and I mentioned about clasp buildings. Well, this is a clasp station building made by Bachmann, and I thought it looked lonely, so I also invested in the Bachmann Red Star Parcels building. Again, a clasp construction typical of the late 60s, early 70s. Now in front of the station, obviously we have pavements to go in, but I also needed some space for taxi drop-off type arrangements around the front. So there is our road coming back from the coach park, and our traffic goes off. So nice bit of room there. So we can access these two buildings okay for pedestrian use, and there's the pavement coming up from the coach area. And then moving on, we've got the main access road to this particular car park, and then you can put cars either side, but please remember that obviously you will have more cars here. In fact, this whole area will of course be car parks. And then we run down to the far side in this section area here, and we'll have a permanent way type construction, and there'll be a drop off in the levels here to take it down to this board height. So we've got a little bit of a height dimension in here, and this then will all be sort of paved over, as it were, with plywood. But what about the platform width? Now, with reference from Bristol Parkway, I've worked out my dimensions to be 15 feet from the edge of the platform to the metal fence that's going to go run along here where you see the green line. How do you measure it off? Well, you use a scale ruler. This is made by Expo, and it's obviously 4mm, the foot, which is 00. And then you can just measure off in feet and mark it up quite simply. Why 15 feet? Well, because I need to put in some kind of shelter. I'm not too sure where I've got these from, and I can't find a decent type shelter, like this. But this would need to run like a Bristol Parkway, almost the whole length of the station, which would be lovely. So if you know where you can get one of these, or someone who makes a 3D sort of lean-to type shelter, would be absolutely marvellous. That is a little bit, not overscale, but it's a bit too big really. It's more of a kind of a bus stop affair, isn't it? So that's what I'm after. So 15 feet, and then I've got here, this area here, I've got the bases for the buildings. And this dimension, the other side of the buildings, I've gone from 15 feet out to 20 feet. And the reason for that is I need to get my footbridge in. So my footbridge would need to be reasonably sort of far enough away from the edge, but also far enough away from the railings. So I've got this to go in here. This is a shaky old footbridge that I got from Buffers the other day out of their scrap bin. Good old Maria and Mike down there do pop in. So I need to make up a footbridge that will go across here, get that done. And then we go back to 15 feet along to the end. Now you might be curious as to why these platforms are so narrow when this one is so big. Well, I'm going to put that down to my sort of own poetic license, because when I first designed Chadwick, I had a track in here. This wasn't going to be a bay platform, but it had a point back here, ran in, and this became an island. And then similarly, in reality, you could just as easily have a goods depot here and this sort of thing, and then in the fullness of time, when it was taken out, they would just backfill the platform, which is why it appears so much wider. And that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. But that's kind of my thought process behind it. So this one will seem much narrower, but over here, obviously, we've got to put the other stuff in there. You know, your kiosk and my bridge, which will go in kind of here, so it will fill up, you know, quite well with all the nif-naf trivia and seats and that sort of things. So now I get to the point where I have to cut out some of this board. So what have I got to do? Well, I've got to cut up this section here because this platform is too wide. And then at the other end, I've got to cut out a section and then sort out this taper as the board runs down into that far end. But I think the design here will work. But of course, the only thing that's going to go in concrete is those these bits of timber are about to be removed, and I'm going to sort of chamfer the end down there as the platform will, or as the road will run down into the new area. Now the next thing I'm aiming to do is to try to take off this edge with this electric planer, just to give it a little more, trying to build in a bit of a slope. And just for a change, it's now the following day. The platform material is now screwed down, all good, and it's now possible now to secure down the track, knowing that it won't impinge on the platform. I know it seems to be the wrong way around, that you'd lay the track then the platform, but because of the complexity of the curve, it was easier to put the platform in and then make sure the track is in the right place, because there is some latitude between the tracks without sort of impinging trains passing each other. I also came back yesterday evening and progressed the other end, and using an old offcut of 6mm ply previously used on the Chadwick airbrush video and also in the garage for spraying track, I've trimmed this and popped this into place there, and also a few sort of bits to infill to make good, as it were. And I've also put in a couple of pieces to aid with the slope now, coming down from the platform surface, well, the road and platform surface, down into a little bit of a dip into this area here. And it also makes more of a feature of the edge of the platform to show the disparity between levels. Now, with the paper template back in place, all I need to do is transfer the markings from the template onto the timber beneath. But one change I'm going to make to this diagram is the footbridge, because it needs to land on platform 2 around here. So therefore it needs to come off from platform 1 around here, and clearly the base now is outside of those markings. So I'm going to just change that line there out to there as we take it through onto the plan below. Now I think it's time to come clean about something that's been troubling me over the last couple of weeks, and that's using this 3mm cork as a base for the platform, because I do want it to have the same finish as that on platform 2. But the problem is I've always wanted the station building to come straight out onto the pavement and level kind of road surface. I didn't want a step down surface. What I also need is a fence along the platform. Now I did want to use a 4mm piece of trunking to segregate the platform to the road surface. The reason 4mm is it's slightly higher than the cork. Now, not having the right plastrut, if I put one inside the other and bolster it up a bit, I ended up just about 4mm. Lovely. And now I have something substantial that I can paint and then glue my my spear fencing in place. Marvellous. So if I put my cork in here and paint it the same as platform 2, and then I have cork on this side, marvellous, and then I can think about the road surface and the pavements. And for the pavements I'm going to use this Wills kit SS777, and this is only half a millimetre thick, so that will look okay. So to do one thing at a time, take it easy in steps, is I shall cut the cork to cover the platform up to this concrete plinth, on which I will then, in fullness of time, glue my fencing. The last thing I need to do is glue the fencing down now, because obviously over the next few weeks it would just get smashed to bits, wouldn't it? So is to lay the cork and lay this trunking in place, and then I can think about painting the platform surface. Well, after a few hours of wasting cork and exercising bad language, we've got them down and yeah, ready to go really. All I'm going to use is neat PVA and paint it on there, and hopefully a few weights they'll go off, and then hopefully later in the day I can then paint it and then we can move on. But cutting all these little bits of cork was an absolute pain in the backside. But hey, no one died. Right then, more weights. Well, it's all drying nicely, fingers crossed. I made a mistake earlier. The paving, it wasn't Wills SS777, it was Wills SS77, and it's period York paving, and hopefully I can show you this a little later. Well, I imagine that the PVA appears to have dried because the cork is now reasonably in place. I mean, there's no bubbles or anything, so I think we're good to go. So what I've done now is on the platform edge I've masked it with Tamiya masking tape, hopefully so that the spray paint now won't go underneath it. And on top of that I've used some cheap masking tape then to carry the seal on to loads and loads of cling film, because obviously I can't risk this spray paint hitting, you know, the other platforms and all this area, the track work and everything else. It's a textured paint from Rust-Oleum. I bought it from B&Q, and this is aged iron. There's a previous video to which I shall leave a link up here. It caused a bit of problem because the first can I bought was Duff and it wouldn't spray properly. Now, a word of warning for this stuff, it absolutely stinks. I did it outside last time and everything sort of went well. But I then brought the board in to dry, and you know, Margaret came back and she says, "God, what's that smell?" So it does give off fumes for several hours. So my idea now, as it's just gone 3 o'clock in the afternoon, is to give this a good spray, come back in a couple of hours once the fumes have died down, spray it again if necessary because that's the drying time, and then leave it overnight, and then I can continue building it out. So that's the general stuff with this. It's textured paint from Rust-Oleum. I bought it from B&Q, but I'm sure it's available elsewhere. Aged iron is what I'm using. So all masked off, put my mask on and give it a go. I'll be back in a few hours. Well, there'll be no surprise to know it's now the following day. I came back up yesterday evening after a couple of hours and I sprayed it again on the sort of patches where it appeared a bit thin. So now it's time for the big reveal. I'm not really worried about the state of the platform. I can always touch that up. But it's obviously, you know, should I have caused damage elsewhere? So we'll peel this off slowly and see the results. Now I'm sure you know that the trick about removing the masking is to pull away from the paint. If you pull it across, then you could peel the paint back. So hopefully this should work. Hopefully I'm using low tack tape so you won't get any tape residue left on the board. And it appears to be coming away quite cleanly. Now I must confess, this seems to be going swimmingly. But don't speak too soon, Charlie. Well, there we have it. I must confess I am somewhat pleased and also relieved that it's come out all right. Just up here it's not quite perfect. There is a small gap here, but well, I think we can live with that. Now the next thing to install is the trunking that I want to run along the edge of the platform on which to glue my spear fencing. So how are we going to do that? Now I'd hoped I had some 4mm square, but I don't. I've got some 3mm square, so I've put the 3mm square inside a U-shaped trunking. Now the trunking I'm using is from Plasticard. The square plug trunking is 90621 and the U-shape is 90584. It's a compromise. It's not ideal, but it's all I've got here on the day. Otherwise I would have bought 4mm square trunking. So I've glued one inside the other, which sort of gets it up to 3.5mm, and then I can now glue these in place on there. But first I need to paint them, and I'm going to paint them with Tamiya Deck Tan, and it's the same paint that I've used on the edges of the platform to give it that sort of semi-weathered concrete feel. Now these little strips are dry. To glue them in place, I'm using super phatic glue. I could just easily use rocket card glue. It's the same sort of stuff, but it's just a case of gluing them into place, and then what I'm going to do is prop them into place with a book whilst they dry. And it's only a 10 to 20 minutes sort of drying time with this, so it shouldn't take too long at all. A little bit more runny than I thought that. Don't want to get it on the platform surface. Lovely. And just a couple of books to hold it in place. Now I've cut and glued most of the upper level now of the cork. I've just got this one little panel left to do, but I'm going to leave the lower section until next time, when I just need to do a little bit more research on exactly what I intend to do down there regarding the permanent way depot. So I don't really want to put 3mm cork down there when actually I might find that that'll make it too high, won't look right or whatever. So I'm going to get this lot down, and then we can have a look at see what it looks like, and then have a look at the paving stones that I want to install around the front of the station. Now I mentioned using this Wills SS77 period York paving, and hopefully you can see that it's quite a flexible thing and it fits in reasonably well on the layout. Gives it a nice pedestrian sort of feel to a safe walkway. And in the pack you get 6 of these frets, so a fair old amount of commodity really, and I bought two sets, but they need to be painted before you paint your road surface, because trying to paint the edge of that curbstone will be an absolute nightmare because you're bound to get paint back on your road surface. So it's just a case of trying to pick which way to do it. As you recall, I used the textured paint from B&Q. Rust-Oleum aged iron was on the platform surface, and the buildings themselves, there was the Red Star Parcels Office from Bachmann, and this is 44191, and the station building itself is a southeastern station, and the one I've got is the white fronted building rather than the blue front, and the white one is 441016 and the blue fronted one is 1016A. Marvellous. Now I had mentioned about this fencing. This is an old piece from an old layout, but I don't want to put the new stuff in there because it is so fragile and it's very easy, as you can see here, to break off the top of the spears. But that's hopefully there, from seeing this you can get the general look of what I was trying to achieve. And the spear fencing is made by Ratio, and it's stock number 434 GWR spear fencing straights, and there are 4 per pack, but be advised they are fragile. Well, I do hope you found that's part of the station build interesting. The trouble is these projects are enormous, and it's like kind of a giant marshmallow, and you go in there and you're trying to consume it and you eat it and you can't. You just get full up and it makes you sick, and to be honest, it just puts you off it. But if you go back to that giant marshmallow and you consume a little bite at a time, then eventually you'll consume it. And just with a major project like a station, you just go in there, sort out this piece of the platform, do the painting, do the track plan, do the pavements, do the bridge. And if you do it in smaller segments, you don't lose your mojo, and it's easier to consume the giant marshmallow that might be a station building. Anyway, I do hope you found it interesting, and if you did, then please give it the old thumbs up, be much appreciated. And you know, in that algorithms love that sort of thing. There's the old button if you're not a subscriber, you know, and subscribing is free. There's the button if you want to sort of support the channel by becoming a patron. Remember, patrons get it a day earlier with no ads. And in the meantime, there's a video here and here, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks a lot, take care. Bye-bye.